Let's bring in our panel here in Hanoi. Eric Talmadge is the Pyongyang bureau chief for the Associated Press, and Jeff Earl is the deputy U.S. political editor for the Daily Mail. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Eric, your sense first. First of all, there's a rare element that the North Koreans come out and hold a press conference. Clearly, they wanted to put their point of view out there. Your sense of where things are after this summit fell apart?
I think the North Korean side was clearly surprised by the outcome. I think they're disappointed, and so they wanted to make sure that they got their position across. They took a little bit of an issue with President Trump's claim that they wanted all sanctions removed, although they pretty much admitted that they were looking for pretty much all the sanctions to be removed, all the significant ones.
When you're talking about the sanctions, you've got these UN sanctions. There's 5 of the 11. It's essentially the meat of the sanctions would be taken out if they dropped those, right?
That's right. So the North Koreans came out with a really big ask right from the beginning, and so it's not really surprising that that didn't work out. But I don't think we should keep in mind that Kim also vowed to maintain his moratorium on missile launches and nuclear tests, and that's a really big deal. So we don't need to go right back into crisis mode. We can continue talks, and I think the door was left open for that. So that's an important outcome.
Jeff, the president will be on Sean Hannity's show tonight. We have a piece of that talking about his reaction to this deal. Take a listen.
They wanted to denuke certain areas, and I wanted everything. And the sanctions are there, and I didn't want to give up the sanctions unless we had a real program. Mm-hmm. And they're not ready for that, and I understand that fully. I really do. I mean, they spent a lot of time building it, and that doesn't mean the world has to be happy. But I wanted them to denuke.
You know, a lot of times these things are baked in the cake, that the lower level officials go in, they do all the grunt work, and then the leaders come in and kind of pull the rabbit out of the hat. This time it's the 2 leaders really doing the negotiating.
Absolutely, and there's a reason for that, because that leaves you less likely to be in a situation where you fly 8,000 miles and you don't have anything physical to show for it. Now, this is a unique situation, and Kim Jong-un is not the leader of every country in the world. But I think President Trump, invested a lot in his personal diplomacy, and so far we don't have anything to show for it.
But the walk away, does that give him more street cred in the region or back home? Well,
I think people who, and the North Koreans watch President Trump very closely, and I think people who know him know that this is a classic negotiating tactic for him. So if he's unwilling to take their initial ask and walk away and demand more, I mean, I think they know that that's a little bit about what's going on. And I think also Trump and Mr. Pompeo also know that the North Koreans are trying to make a bid here.
Do you think the North Koreans will come back and say, let's talk again?
Definitely. I don't think this is over. I think this is, like you were saying, this is a kind of a gambit on both sides. And the North Koreans like to come out hard in negotiations like this, so it's not really that surprising. I am a bit surprised that both sides weren't more aware of what their positions were, but this is going to continue, I think.
And I just want to ask you about reporting in Pyongyang. How difficult is that? I mean, they're obviously watching you, but you're filing from Pyongyang. I mean, that's got to be challenging.
It is a very challenging job. I mean, we have surprising ability to get around and see things. Access has been very hard. I'm the only American journalist who's regularly in Pyongyang, and it's very difficult being an American in Pyongyang, for sure.
That's interesting. I want to talk about the politics very quickly, Jeff. Here is former Vice President Biden talking today about the fallout from all of this.
Coddle dictators. You cannot think of anyone who has thrown their arms around or chosen the word of dictators and thugs over even our own intelligence communities. Standing before the world and taking the word of Vladimir Putin over the entire intelligence community. Our national reputation is being tarnished.
We don't know if Joe Biden's going to run for president or not, but he was pretty critical of coddling dictators. But most Democrats came out and said, it was good that the president walked away from this deal.
I think that's right. I mean, there's a lot of concern among some Trump critics that he was going to put a lot of sanctions on the table, put a formal end to the war on the table, and not get anything really concrete in return, particularly given that North Korea has material and nukes all over the place. So I think there's a lot of relief on the part of critics that he didn't set us on a road that would have given up a lot of leverage and left us in a worse negotiating position a little bit later.
We'll see what comes next. Gentlemen, we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you very much.